In this video we are going to take a closer look at the upcoming 10th edition of Warhammer 40k that has been revealed during Adepticon and what the potential impacts on collecting and playing a Deathwatch army might be. In the first part, we will go through some of the relevant 10th edition reveals that happened so far. In the second part, we will then look into how a beginner could go about starting a Deathwatch army between now and the actual release of 10th edition. Lastly, there will be a quick summary of what has been covered.
Welcome to SwissHammer, your channel for modeling in Warhammer 40k. My name is Temmer, and I will be guiding you through this video.
This episode has been inspired by one of my viewers who asked me about how I would go about the Deathwatch beginners list at 1k points. With 10th edition only a handful of months away, aka this summer, it left me wondering what kind of list I could possibly recommend with so many unknown factors. As such, I decided to extend the question a bit towards how I would personally go about starting a Deathwatch army at this point in time. Jumps between editions tend to be massive, as any Deathwatch veteran who was here for the change from 8th to 9th might surely remember. Stormbolters and special issue ammunition, anyone? Anyway, as GW announced during the initial preview, the changes are going to be especially massive this time, as they are trying to go for a more simplified version of the game without making it simple as such. GW will surely follow up on this sort of statement in future previews, but what we know so far is that they will heavily limit pre-game decisions, the usage of stratagems, rebalancing all datasheets, and all armies will have their rules fit on one page. As I was jokingly mentioning before, perhaps they will print the Deathwatch rules in very small fonts. Kidding, or am I? My first thought was indeed that this might mean an oversimplified Deathwatch, and perhaps the iconic stunts that we can currently pull with kill teams might go away. On second thought, however, let's also keep in mind that they mentioned how a lot of stuff will be moved to abilities on datasheets, and this is where kill teams might in fact retain their complexity. There is absolutely nothing preventing them from just having all those can add X amount of datasheets to a kill team, will get X ability when datasheet set is present, and so on, basically what the different kill team entries currently contain in our supplement. This would then indeed leave a size of rules, such as handling mixed units, exclusive librarian powers and stratagems and the sword, to fit on a single page. Please note that this is entirely based on speculation. What could also happen is that we do in fact get simplified kill teams, as I don't think they would drop something so iconic and deeply tied to lore, but basically they could just let us turn any datasheet into a kill team by leaving its original rules and just adding some extra Deathwatch stuff. As an example, take an aggressor squad, it gets special issue ammunition and some wound rerolls for whatever cost they see fit, and that's now our kill team. Again, entirely speculation. My point here is that currently we have absolutely no idea what is going to happen, could be anything from very little to massive changes to kill teams. Let's keep that in mind for later. What we do however know already is that boarding actions rules will remain the same and that they will turn the existing combat patrols into a small-scale game mode. These boxes were currently roughly around 500 points. What will happen there is that you basically play with the full combat patrol and they are balanced against each other, making it perfect as an entry-level purchase that lets you easily jump into the game. They also mentioned something about potentially simplified rules or some extras in order to make the combat patrol playable. This means that for any beginner looking to get started with the game, a combat patrol might in fact be the safest investment for the time being. Furthermore, for anyone with already a few models available interested in boarding actions, these won't go away anytime soon either. In fact, I have recently done a full review of the first 2 Arcs of Omen books, Abaddon and Angron, which provide the basics of boarding actions, with Space Marines and of course Deathwatch. The link is in the description. Then lastly, on the potential new models themselves, we know for sure that the iconic Terminators are going to get a relaunch. Furthermore, in the epic trailer we are seeing some additional new models, including a fully ranged version of the Redemptor Dreadnought, a Gravis Apothecary, and some new Phobos units. All good stuff. But especially because of the Terminators that we know for sure are going to happen and might possibly be included in the initial launch box, I would advise against investing into datasheets of our firstborn kill team, the Proteus, at this point. Oh my god, is Temur proclaiming Firstborn dead and Deathwatch veterans discontinued? No, quite the contrary, I fully expect them to still be delivering well into 10th edition. However, with every datasheet getting a rebalance and the current free Wargear madness, I would advise against building up any Deathwatch veterans at this point, unless you are going full magnets, which I would recommend either way, but anyway, I would also recommend waiting for the new Terminator models and not buying any of the old ones. As a result, there is really no point investing into the current Proteus kill team models as we know them, as they require Terminators to function well, and the whole Wargear situation might look completely different in 10th, or even how we built such a kill team in the first place. As I mentioned in my latest tournament coverage, for the more veteran players, I think it is a good time to hold back on any major investments until further information or even the actual 10th release becomes available. Which brings me to another important part I mentioned, which is that faction rules and datasheets will be available for free at launch, meaning we can start refitting magnetized loadouts or chopping off arms right away. But returning to the original question, with all this preview information available, what to do as a beginner thinking about picking up Deathwatch and possibly the hobby in general? Well, I did not think I would ever say this, but at this point I would simply start with the Combat Patrol Deathwatch, as this is going to be the most future-proof investment to be done for the time being. I did a video on various starter boxes months ago, the link is in the description. In a nutshell, what I immensely dislike about our Combat Patrol is the 10 intercessors and the inability to play any kill teams with the models included. And make no mistake, intercessors are not in a good place under the current set of rules, so having 10 of them is not what I would consider a great start. Nonetheless, with the new addition and the rebalancing underway, that might as well change, and having a few of the standard Space Marine troops is not the worst for a collection that might be growing over years and editions. To then get up to 1k points, I would add a second Combat Patrol, namely the Dark Angels one. The reasons for this are twofold. First of all, I think the Combat Patrol Dark Angels actually has good models for Deathwatch. Plus, you'll now have access to 2 Combat Patrols, which would allow for letting the 2 Combat Patrols face off against each other, say to play with a friend who doesn't have any models yet. For the exact 1k list, we have to get a little creative, as well as invest into a handful more models. First of all, for HQs, we'll be needing a Primaris Captain with a Power Sword and Storm Shield, aka the Indomitus loadout. What we could do here is kit bashing the lieutenant from the Combat Patrol Deathwatch into the mentioned captain by giving him a storm shield, but keep in mind that in order to keep the original Combat Patrol Deathwatch playable, we need to be able to revert him back. Magnets would do wonders here, but in case that's out of the question, and or you want to keep the lieutenant pristine, picking up the vanilla Primaris Captain model and replacing his bolter arm with a salvaged storm shield will do fine. The storm shield is mandatory in order to bring our amazing Dominus Aegis relic for the 5+ invul bubble, which will pair excellent with our remaining picks. We then start our troop selection with the Forest Kill team, to which we add 7 of our intercessors, one being the Sarge with the Thunder Hammer, and 1 intercessors with the Stardust Grenade Launcher add-on. We then add 3 Outriders, which are available separately as their own kit. Ideally, we would have between 4 to 5 Outrider models, but the goal here is to go for as few additional models as possible. This kill team will always combat squad, the 3 Outriders going with the Sergeant plus the spare Intercessor, allowing them to act as infantry and literally drive through walls, one of the main benefits of playing Deathwatch. For our second pick, we are then making an Indomitor kill team, where again the heavy intercessors need to be obtained separately. To this we are then adding our 3 aggressors from the Combat Patrol Deathwatch, as well as 2 Bolter Inceptors from the Combat Patrol Dark Angels. I would really have loved to go for the Plasma variant here, but points just didn't allow. Anyway, we are also adding the Dominator specialism for some extra wound rerolls against elites, which was more of a choice based on leftover points, but it should turn out to be useful enough under the current set of rules with the Arcs of Omen detachments. For our third troops pick, we'll go with 5 intercessors, again the Sarge rocking the Thunder Hammer, and 1 intercessor with the Astaris grenade launcher. As I mentioned earlier, extra intercessors is not what I would personally pick for a competitive list nowadays, but the goal here is to roll with what we have available from the combat patrols. Then for elites, we'll be including the Primaris Apothecary, upgraded to Chief plus Selfless Healer, as well as the Redemptor Dreadnought. So what does this leave us with? Well, first of all, the Indomitor kill team is our 10-man brick, which will want both the captain and the apothecary nearby, playing it as a small castle. Between the hit rerolls, 5 plus invul and 6 plus feel no pain, option to heal and rest models, they will be highly annoying to deal with. Note that thanks to the core keyword, our remaining troops as well as the Dreadnought all potentially benefit from the 5 plus invul bubble from the captain, as well as his rerolls, good stuff. Our remaining intercessors and especially the combat squad with the 3 outriders are there to grab objectives and be annoying. Note that they are all OPSEC and you can build a long chain with the outriders combat squad, potentially snagging objectives while still staying in range of some aura effect from the captain or the apothecary. What this list is missing is some heavy firepower outside of the somewhat swingy plasma cannon from the Redemptor, courtesy of having to take all those intercessors and not having the points for the 2 plasma inceptors. Nonetheless, we have the Redemptor, the aggressors and the 2 Thunderhammer Sarges able to deliver some hurt in close combat. Assuming we are playing beginner versus beginner, we should be well prepared for similar style of entry lists. Now, as I keep bashing the intercessors, for those looking to extend the army even further at this point, one option would be the Combat Patrol Space Marines with all the Phobos units. What I dislike immensely here is that they snuck in the Impulsor, which is some neat tech on its own, and I'll be releasing a guide to building and playing it in the near future, but it just bothers me that they kind of snuck this into a box where it really does not fit. Either way, same deal as with the Combat Patrol Dark Angels, this would give us yet another Combat Patrol to play Combat Patrol versus Combat Patrol with, and for our 1k Deathwatch list, I would then replace the Intercessor squad for 5 Infiltrators, one of which with the Helix Gauntlet, which are great for their forward deploy and deep strike deny bubble. The box is also generally a good start to start a Spectre's kill team, which might be interesting for a higher points list, and not to mention that some new Phobos units will be released in 10th, which might pair with the Infiltrators, assuming that we more or less get to keep our kill teams. As an alternative, there is always the option of an Infiltrator box, which can also be used to build some incursors. All in all, while much is unknown about 10th edition at this point, I think by cleverly combining the combat patrols that have been confirmed to be future-proof, beginners have the opportunity to get started with both the game and Deathwatch already at this point, and won't really be risking much in terms of getting the wrong models for the new edition. To wrap things up, over the course of the video, we have looked at the relevant information regarding the upcoming 10th edition, which will launch sometime during summer. The main takeaways here are that GW is planning a huge rework of Warhammer 40k, resulting in what they call a simplified version of the game, with less pre-game decisions, fewer stratagems, the rebalancing of all datasheets, army rules fitting on a single page, with both the datasheets and army rules being made available for free upon launch. As we could see in the epic trailer already, there will also be a bunch of new Space Marine models, including the rework of the iconic Terminators. With so many unknowns, it is currently difficult to predict how exactly Deathwatch will play and which datasheets will be good for us. What we know for sure, however, is that both boarding actions and combat patrols will stay, the latter even getting their own sort of minigame mode, where the different combat patrols face off against each others, and will supposedly be balanced for that level of play, making it ideal for beginners. As such, my recommendation for getting started with Deathwatch at this point would be to go for the Combat Patrol Deathwatch, What a Cold Day in Hell, and then to further extend the army with the Combat Patrol Dark Angels. Not only will this allow to play Combat Patrol versus Combat Patrol, but by adding a handful of additional models only, including a Primaris Captain, a box of Outriders and Heavy Intercessors, we can create a 1k Deathwatch army list with a good compromise between using the Combat Patrol models and actually making use of the Deathwatch toolset, including 2 kill teams, infantry bikes and the Dominus Siege's relic. If we wanted to push things further, we could also grab Combat Patrol Space Marines, or just grab a bunch of Infiltrators, in order to replace some of the Intercessors with the more desirable Infiltrators, with their forward deploy and deep strike denial bubble. Links to both example lists are in the description. With Terminators getting their relaunch, I remain positive that our Deathwatch veterans and potentially the Firstborn kill team will continue to be a staple for Deathwatch lists in 10th edition, but with war gear uncertainty and new Terminator models around the corner, my advice would be not to invest into these at this point unless you are magnetizing the loadouts on the Deathwatch veterans, which is the recommended way to build them anyway, and for the Terminators I would definitely wait for the release of the new kit, or even kits. All in all, while much is unknown about 10th edition and how exactly the Deathwatch will play, I think by cleverly combining the combat patrols that have been confirmed to be future-proof, beginners have the great opportunity to get started with both the game and Deathwatch anyway. So that's it for approaching Deathwatch and the new edition as a beginner. What kind of recommendations would the more veteran Deathwatch players offer to a beginner at this point? And how are you guys approaching 10th edition in general? Hyped for updated Deathwatch rules, or is it going to be all doomsday? Let me know in the comments. Then finally, if you made it this far and I still have your attention, if you like my content, any additional support is greatly appreciated as it helps me invest into future videos. For that, I have both a Ko-fi as well as a Patreon page, links are in the description. Furthermore, I would also like to mention that there is a SwissHammer Facebook page where I will be posting links to my videos as well as articles I find of interest. I do read a lot about the hobby, but not all of it will always end up as its own video. I look forward to seeing you there as well. As always, thank you very much for watching, guys. Your continued support is greatly appreciated. I hope you have been enjoying this video, give me a thumbs up if you did, and don't forget to subscribe if you haven't done so already. Thanks again and see you next time.